Ready? Hi everyone, this is Lisa Tamati here on Pushing the Limits. Thank you very, very much for joining me once again on our podcast. We love to have you join us. And today I have a special guest all the way from Connecticut in the USA. And this is a guy who has been a part of our world now for about a year and a half, I think, and is actually works with us at Running Hot and is our VP of everything, I call him. He's head of all our technical departments, if you like. And he's the one that makes everything run smoothly in the background because Neil and I definitely don't know what the hell we're doing. So welcome to the show, Vin Framularo. Vin, how you doing?
Thanks, Lisa. Great. Good morning to you. Thanks for having me. And always love talking with you every week. And yeah, you're right. Almost a little more than a year I've been part of the Running Hot family, and pretty excited, and have been following you for even a little time before that. And I'm sure we can get into that a little bit. So excited to be on. I love your podcast, and you know me, I'm huge on the personal development and stuff. So excited to be on today.
You definitely are. So one of the reasons I wanted to bring Vin on the show, we had one of our other athletes, and we're going to do a few athletes over the next few months. One of our other athletes, Matt Scrafton from New Zealand, who just did his first 100K, and we made a bit of a case study out of him, and we did a bit of a coaching session. So we're going to do something similar today. We're going to share Vin's story and his background and how he's just got to complete some very, very big races. So Vin came to us, he found us on the net, as you do, joined up, and then we actually connected over all the technical stuff, and we ended up getting him on board with our company. But Vin has got an incredible mindset, and this is what I really want to delve into today, because he has a relentlessly positive attitude that I just cannot believe sometimes, and his mindset really, really shines through. So I want to dig in today a little bit into Vin's history and his running successes that he's had, but also how he's got there, because he's had a couple of massive obstacles to overcome on the way. So Vin, I want you to start by telling us a little bit, about you, your family, where you're from, and how you got into running and what you've been doing.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. So I'm from Trumbull, Connecticut, born and raised, and I've lived a lot of different places, but that's always been home base. And right now I'm talking to you in my house, which is about a mile away from my parents' house and where I grew up. So we have our entire family in our neck of the woods here, and I'm one of 5 siblings. So I have an older sister, an older brother, and 2 younger twin sisters.
Wow.
And I think, I'm the only runner in the family, and I always tease people about that because every family needs one of us crazy endurance athletes or runners. And kind of interestingly, I got into running when I was about 9 or 10 years old, because basketball was my first love and big sport at the time. And I remember telling my dad, we used to go vacation up in the Berkshires, and I really wanted to improve my speed and my vertical jump for basketball. Now, I'm not the tallest person, but man, I could jump like a kangaroo. And when I was like a young kid, I was like, okay, I want to be even better. So I forget how I came up with the idea. I think I saw it in a movie, and I was like, Dad, I need to get ankle weights and strap them to my feet, and then I can run up and down the mountain when we go on vacation. And most parents would tell you, you're crazy, and especially to a 9 or 10-year-old that wanted to do this. And my dad was like, sure, no problem, and I'll follow you in the car. So I would do this 2-mile loop around the mountain with ankle weights strapped to my feet, and my dad would follow me in the car. And to this day, he still takes credit of not just the genetics as an athlete, but that he strapped ankle weights on my feet.
I love it.
And I'll tell you, that worked excellent. I got good at basketball. It helped my overall fitness. And just as a young kid to take that initiative, now that I think about it, I'm like, wow, what kind of 9-year-old wants to be like, yeah, I want to go run 2 miles up the mountain with ankle weights on my feet?
Yeah.
Especially nowadays, it's like, no, I'll probably just play video games or hang out with my friends, right? But so that really led into, I really started to get serious about running in my high school career. I was still playing basketball, and then I needed a sport to do in the fall. So I first played soccer, and then in the spring ran track, and the track coach was like, "Hey, congratulations, you're going to run year round." And I'm sure a lot of runners have probably been through that if they were a multi-sport athlete. And I was like, wait, you mean like run for fun, like distance and
What for another sport? What the hell?
and just like most runners, I fell in love with it. And it was really at that time I learned, unlike most sports where it's like you fight for playing time or you fight to be on a team, this was the first sport I was part of. Not only if you weren't as good, you got more playing time, so to say, but it really had a direct correlation to the hard work that you put in,
yes,
that you get out. And I was always a really hard worker, and I was, went on to captain all of my teams in high school as well as ran in college and grad school. So that was really the base of running. And then fast forward, till about a year and a half ago when I found running hot, I started getting into ultra running, which is ironic because I remember in college reading Runner's World and seeing your buddy Dean Karnassus on the cover of a magazine. And I'm like, man, this guy's nuts. Why would anybody want to do that?
Now you're doing it.
And I think at the time I had just run my first marathon, and I was probably like 18 years old.
Wow.
And ran the Boston Marathon just for fun and for training. And I was like, gosh, that was terrible. Why would anybody? And at the time I was.
Oh, wow.
So it's funny how life, it kind of points you in certain directions. And I'm very grateful I found you guys and ultra running for a lot of reasons. But that's kind of the brief background to my story there.
Yeah, right. That sort of, I can't believe you did a marathon at 18 years old. Okay. You definitely got a nutty gene in you. And that's definitely come out of late. So in the last couple of years, so I think it was like 2.5 years ago, then you had a really bad accident that you were currently in training. Can you go into this story a little bit?
Yeah, so I've told myself after college and a little bit after college, I'm like, gosh, I'm never going to run a marathon ever again. I'll just be a weekend warrior and have fun doing some 5Ks and half marathons and stuff. And then it all kind of ebbs and flows. So I eventually re-caught the marathon bug and thought it'd be a great idea to sign up again for a marathon. So I signed up for the Bend, Oregon Marathon. And that was right around my birthday, which is in April. So I was pretty excited, and I was like, started training for it and started to really get back into running shape, because I went for about a year or two where, my career took precedence over. Yeah. I was still running, but not, training as much as I should be. And, those rest days would turn into week-long rest days instead of hitting the gym when you should be. So I was snowboarding in February, and I went off a mogul and landed really hard. It was super icy. I'll never forget. It was President's Day weekend. It was a Monday, which was our holiday, and I didn't realize at the time, but when I fell back on my back on the mogul, I couldn't barely get up, and I couldn't move my right leg at all. So I went to the mountain doctor in ER, and then when I got home, went to the ER, and it turns out I broke my back. And of course, like a typical runner, I said, I just want to know, well, doc, how long is my recovery time? Because I have a race in 9 weeks. So my marathon was 9 weeks away. And he looked at me like, you don't understand. You probably won't be walking right for about a year or two, and you might not ever run again.
Wow. And
my response to that was, I remember kind of just looking at him and going, well, what if I drop to the half marathon instead of the marathon? And the doctor just looked at me like I had two heads and says, that's not going to happen. So I left the doctor that day, and I was like, no, that's going to happen. I'm going to that race.
I'll compromise. I'll do a half, but I'm going. I don't know how. I'm still in a wheelchair at this stage, but I'll be there.
So I went and got a second opinion, and of course that doctor kind of said something similar, and I decided to take it into my own hands and say, nope, I can heal myself. I'll do lots of stretching, lots of rehab for my back, lots of exercises, and a lot of mindset. So I started to look into alternative therapies. And it's kind of like if you want different results, you have to do something extraordinary.
Yeah.
So I heard about this book called Self-Mastery Through Conscious Autosuggestion by, it's from the 1920s, Lisa, and it was this author, Emile Coué. And basically, it's just all the power of your mind and the power of belief and saying every day and every way I'm getting better and better.
Yep.
And I listened to that book. I got the audio version at the time religiously for like 2 hours at night when I went to bed and 2 hours in the morning. And I did that for weeks.
Wow.
And between the rehab that I was doing, just stretching, strength training, and as well as constantly feeding that belief system in my mind through that book, I was able to not just be walking back to normal, but the pain was totally gone. And I was went on to run that half marathon 9 weeks after hurting my back. Granted, it was the slowest half marathon I had ever run in my life, but it was also the most fun because I was just so grateful to be running. And it was also a lot of fun for me because it made me be really grateful for the running and my body that I always kind of took for granted. And my running career up to that point was always just about trying to hit PRs, so this was really eye-opening, just to be grateful to my slow time, was a PR for someone else, and just to be able to be out there and to have something I love that I've been doing pretty much my whole life be kind of almost ripped away.
What part of your back was damaged? Was it so your spinal cord was obviously intact, or like your right leg wasn't working properly?
I broke my sacrum and my L4 and L5.
Yeah.
And so it was those just leading all the way. It felt like all the way from my buttocks up through my lower back. So that was.
So it took a lot of rehab as well as the mindset stuff. So you were really focused on both of those aspects for that 9 weeks to get back to that half marathon.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. And now, I still take that as a priority. I go to my chiropractor regularly to keep taking care of that back, and I'm fully healed now, thankfully. But really,
so
that also taught me the.
Yeah, you really believe that. I mean, and I certainly believe this too. And that's funny that book that you mentioned, that self-mastery. What is it? Self-mastery.
Yeah, conscious autosuggestion or autosuggestion through self-mastery through conscious autosuggestion. Sorry.
And this is very.
Let me say that again. Self-mastery through conscious autosuggestion.
Okay, self-mastery through conscious autosuggestion. Now, this is really important because this was written in the 1920s, and like the science is now catching up to what was then probably very woo-woo and not validated, but it was obviously a great book already. And now science is really validating, like with the work with Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dr. Bruce Lipton, who I talk about constantly on the show.
Sure, yeah.
Talking about the power of what you believe and what you put in your head. It's not just you're willing something to happen, and you actually influence your cells and your body to heal itself. And I do think that this is this is not an easy thing to do. It's not like, well, I've just decided today to believe in this. It's going to happen. Yeah. This is something that you have to really reprogram that subconscious mind, don't you? And this has helped you, like, moving forward from this. Were you, like, you're really into personal development, just like me?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're always reading every thing under the sun.
Yeah. I'm even rereading your book right now, Running Hot, which is a great one. I would recommend it to anyone listening. So.
Yeah, and we're republishing that, guys, soon. So Running Hot does actually, Neil and I are adding a whole lot to that book and republishing it. Putting out a second edition, hopefully in time for the release of my other book, Relentless, which comes out in March as well. So a bit of a plug there for myself. So watch out for that one. But back to the personal development, it's really, really so important that you do the work before you need it. That you actually have got the tools when you hit a crisis. So.
Yeah. And, a great example of that, at least I was thinking of it recently, and I just encountered right before we got on the call, I was talking about this woman I met at I just finished my first 100-miler, as you know, and thanks to your and Neil's awesome coaching through Running Hot. And, I could talk for hours about that. And
we're going to.
Yeah. And this woman that was at my race, she was pacing a friend of mine who was an adaptive athlete, visually impaired. And it was my first encounter with her, and I got to see her again this weekend. And she was like, Vin, you're so positive. And the whole time I remember at one point we were sitting around the campfire. I wasn't sitting, but I came in quick, said hi, and then went back out because it was a looped course. And she goes, man, you look like you could be asleep walking up, but you're still smiling, and you are still, nope, I got to just keep moving forward. Okay. And that, and she asked me if I'm always like that. And I'm like, yeah, generally I am, but, I take a lot of deliberate practice to work on my mindset. I'm constantly reading books. I'm constantly listening to podcasts such as yours. I remember the start of that race, someone was complaining about the weather. It was 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it got down to like 26 degrees Fahrenheit.
About zero here. Yep.
Yeah. And I just remember thinking, wow, I got to get away from this guy, because they're not going to last. You can't go into a race like that with that kind of mindset. And sure enough, that person only lasted for about 5 hours in a 30-hour race.
Yeah.
Because you can't look at it.
You got to surround yourself with people who are positive and who believe that you can get there, and avoid, like the plague, like anybody who's going to tell you can't do something or it's impossible or complain about everything every 5 minutes, because that is going to sap all of your energy. So you had the wherewithal at that race to go, all right, I'm going to remove myself from this. I need to keep myself, and that's protecting yourself. That's protecting your mindset, and we need to all do this in our daily lives, is protect our mindset from people who will drain us, who are naysayers, who are negative, who tell us we can't do things. Like even like, the doctor who said that you won't ever, you probably won't run again, and you certainly won't be running a marathon, or a half marathon in 9 weeks. So this is what I've noticed with you. Is you have, you and I both do a hell of a lot of personal development stuff. We're constantly trying to better our stuff. In fact, I think I'm a personal development junkie.
Me too.
But I still have a ways to go, I think, in comparison to you, as far as the positivity that you bring on a absolute daily basis. Now, a couple of months ago, Vin was doing, aiming for a 100-miler at the Vermont 100-mile race. Over there. Now, I want to go into this one, because this is a race that didn't go according to plan, and you'd spent a freaking long time going hard out, training, sacrificing a hell of a lot to be at this race. Can you walk us through that race and what happened, and then how you approached that?
Yeah, that was exciting, and I was super pumped for that race. That was my first 100-mile attempt, and going into that, I'd run a handful of 50-milers and 50Ks, and I'm still a very much newbie ultra runner. But thanks to you and Neil, I got on that starting line. My fitness was on point. My mindset was on point. But it was, Lisa, as you know, it was one of the hottest days of the year in about a decade here back home. So in Vermont, the average temperature, including in the morning and at night, was about 98 degrees Fahrenheit, which I don't know the conversion to Celsius on your end, but
about 30.
Then it got up to 115 degrees during the day.
Shit.
And again,
5 or something.
And and I was like, I trained for that. Based on your recommendations, and made sure I trained in the sun and the heat, and my family was there, so I was really excited, and I was fundraising for Vermont Adaptive, so I was pumped. I got bib number 7 through fundraising, which is my lucky number, so I was like, approach that starting line, and I always make a joke. I'm like, the hardest part of a race is over once you show up to the starting line, right?
Yep.
And
done the hard work.
Some people look at me like I'm crazy, and some people laugh. But the race is supposed to be fun. For me, as long as you put in all the hard work, and if you can wake up and not hit that snooze button. And, you know, some of these ultras start at like these
Yeah.
weird hours. And once you get rid of all that pre-race anxiety, it's like, boom, okay, let's go. And it was so hot that day, I experienced something that I would never even expect to be a race obstacle. So I started to get really bad trench foot.
Yeah.
Just from sweating into my shoes so much.
It's so hot.
And I changed my socks multiple times. I changed my shoes. You know, I put all the stuff that you're supposed to put on your feet, but it was just so hot. And I remember I got to mile 50, which was the first point I saw my family, and my mom's a nurse. And going into the race, I told them, hey guys, make sure, just no matter what, tell me to keep going, and you're doing great, so no negativity. And my family's not negative, so I didn't have to tell them, but they're also the type, if I was like, oh, I'm a little tired, they'd be like, oh, we're proud of you, you can sit down. Like,
give you permission to fail
So I got to mile 50, and at that point, that had been the furthest I'd ever run, and I felt great, and I was holding back a lot because it was really hot, but I knew my foot was getting aggravated, so I took my shoe off, and I knew I needed to bandage up my foot, and my mom's face just went white. She just looked, because my foot looked so bad from the trench foot. And she was such a good sport. She didn't say anything, and she was like, sweetie, I'm so proud of you, and what do you want to eat? And she just, but I could tell by the look on her face as a mom and a nurse, she was like, oh gosh.
Oh God.
So my family bandaged me up. I had a little snack, and I kept going. And, you know, I felt great. The fitness was still there. And everyone was like, hey, if your first 100 miler, especially on this course, if you could still run at mile 70, you're in good shape.
Good shape, very good shape, yeah.
So I got to mile 70, and I still had plenty of time for cutoffs. And I was like, yeah, okay, let's see if I can still run comfortably. And I could. But then the next 2 miles, it went downhill at parts where it should have been runnable at least. That I was basically the mile before that. I was like, okay, I can still run like a 9:30 mile, which obviously I wasn't doing the whole race, but I can still comfortably run that pace. Then my gait got so messed up from the trench foot, and my shin got so swollen like a golf ball that I then limped a mile that should have been runnable in about 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the next mile took me about 34 minutes as fast as I can go, which is so frustrating, because all I could think was like, wow, you spent all this time, and I spent all year training and just visualizing the finish line of that race. And I started to do the math in my head. I go, okay, worst case scenario, if I just limp for the rest of the race at 25 minutes per mile or 30 minutes per mile, and that put me at farther than the cutoff, which was like, you know, I did the runner math in my head, which normally I can't do math, but then it became, all of a sudden you're like a math genius, and you're like, that puts me at like 35 hours and 12 seconds, you know? And I remember dropping out, and I told one of the volunteers, and he said, man, but you've got plenty of time for the cutoffs. And I go, well, that last 2 miles basically took me an hour. And he was like, ooh, yeah. And I knew at that point, and if there wasn't a time cutoff, I probably would have kept going. But I just knew I eventually would have missed some of those cutoffs. So that was hard, but I was still very proud of myself, because that was the furthest I'd ever gone and run.
And this is the thing that got me about that story, because I mean, things can go wrong in a race, and yes, you could have carried on and just got to the time limit, and then been shut down by the race people, organisers, and there was a hell of a fallout on that race. So many people didn't finish that race, which would normally finish. And there's always reasons, and there's always things that can happen, and we cannot control all the variables. What we can control is the preparation we do, which you had done. You'd done the work, you've done the mindset stuff, you've done the visualization, and then shit happened, basically.
Yeah.
You got to, what was it, mile 81 or something, and then you had to pull out of the race. Now, for most people that I've worked with, that would have just sent them into the doldrums. Like, they would have been hitting the deck hard. Once they'd actually got over the pain and the physical thing, then comes in I failed, I didn't make it, I set this huge goal, and the disappointment is huge. It's
Yeah.
huge because you've given your heart and soul and all the time that you could have been spending with your friends and your family and all of that sacrifice has gone to nothing, apparently nothing. But you and I know that that's not the case. And with you, and I was expecting, like a couple of days later, we got on the phone or on the call, and I was expecting to have to give you a really good pep talk to pull you out of the doldrums. And
thanks, Coach.
But I didn't need to. I was like, you got on the phone. This happened, that happened, but it was still great and it was awesome. And I was just like, holy hell.
Yeah, and I think I described it when people were like, Vin, how's the race? And I made it to mile 72 that day. And I go, oh my gosh, it was such an epic day. And even though I didn't hit my goal, I knew, like, I know going in that race for next year, like, my fitness was there and I felt awesome. And, thanks to our training program and just my mindset was there. and then I understood and I kind of laughed a little because I'm like, oh, this is why all these ultra runners describe the races and like, oh, I've had this many starts and this many finishes. And I was just laughing about you meet all these interesting people during the day that you're just cheering on and supporting, and you might run with some people for half a mile or you might just pass them at an aid station, or I shared with some folks like 10 or 15 miles or even more throughout the course of the day. And it was just so emotional. It's like taking your whole lifetime of emotions and compressing those into one day. Like all the ups and downs and the laughs and, and the friendships and the family. And so I think that's why I came out of it really positively, because even though didn't hit my mileage goal to the finish, I still had all these awesome experiences, and a lot of us failed, and we failed hard. It's like I left it all out there, and I'm really happy. It's not like I finished, but like half,
you hadn't given it a go.
Didn't give it my all. I definitely gave it my all, and I definitely was, out there. And when I remember coming to the decision to stop. And at first I was like, oh man, because I'm not like that. I'm not a quitter at all. But I was like, nope, I'm good with this. I made it this far. and that's hard to do, Lisa. And I was
huge.
And the next day I took it as a sign, as the proper decision, because we were in line for lunch and I met this nice woman who had trench foot and like kept pushing through it. And to this day, she says she still has like nerve damage from it.
Yep.
And I just took that as a sign from like a higher being to go, hey, Vin, you made the right decision, so you can still come back stronger.
Exactly. Because we've got to think about this. Like, we're not in a war, and we don't need to do permanent damage to ourselves. If you were a soldier and you got trench foot, you had to carry on.
Yeah.
And then the option was that or die. We have the luxury of not being in a silly situation like that and a terrible situation like that, and so. There is no point in an ultra marathon, in my opinion, now, as a mature person, to do permanent damage. And I've done permanent damage to my body. And I'm paying the price of not pulling out when I should have pulled out of races. And so I really commend you with, like, it's not about being lazy. It's not about giving yourself excuses to pull out. It's about really, when it's time to pull out. And I tell a story from a friend of mine, Macca, who he and I were in the New Zealand team together, and we were doing 24-hour racing, and we were over in England, and we'd worked so hard, both of us, for 8 years to qualify to be in the national team to go to the 24-hour champs and stuff.
Awesome.
And the Commonwealth champs. And we were over in England and we're racing, and 2 hours into the run, his leg broke. Like, he had a stress fracture and it broke. And he was trying to run with a broken leg, because this is how strong your mindset can get to a point where you can nearly, like, and he actually had to be dragged off, like, kicking and screaming. He was not taken off. And we had to really calm him down, and he was so bitterly disappointed. And he went back the next 5 years and knocked it out of the ballpark. And at the age, I think he was 55 when he did his best time ever of 217 Ks in 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
He came back, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing is, he was going to be running and doing real massive damage. You shouldn't be trying to run with a broken leg. And so the moral of the story is, yeah, remember that this is a sport and that we don't have to, this is not our life on the line and we shouldn't be pushing that degree. Now, when you did do this and you worked through this in your mind and you keep yourself positive, so a lot of people lose their confidence and then they're down on themselves and then everything starts to spiral downwards. And of course, you've absolutely knackered your body. Like, you've used up all the reserves because you've just run 72 miles.
Yeah.
So you're emotionally in a whirlwind anyway because your body's knackered. And with you, I just didn't see any of that. I've never not seen that. I've usually seen people go down and really depressed, and then it might take 2 weeks or it might take a year for people to sort of come back out of that. And you were like, right, I remember saying to you, it was the next week or something, you were like, right, got to find another race.
Yeah.
Feeling fine. What's up? And I'm going, whoa, just let your body recover first, and so on. And you're like, nah, I'm right. I haven't done my thing. I want another one. So yeah, you did some other races, but then it was last weekend. Or was the weekend before? 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. It seems like months ago by now.
You spoke to us and said, right, I'm gonna do a 30-hour race and I want to hit the 100-mile mark.
Yeah.
You wanted that 100-miler, and this was a course that went round and round. So you pick up the story there, Vin.
Yeah, so this was exciting. So I was excited for this one. It was, again, local. This was in New Hampshire, and they call it the Hamster Wheel race, and the race directors were awesome. And I was looking at different ones to pick out, and I, to your point, importantly, I did take my much needed rest days. I took almost like that month off.
Yep.
And I think I have the mindset after the Vermont, I made sure I signed up for another race, but I made sure I took those rest days and caught up with friends and family and enjoyed social time and just enjoyed, going to the movies. And I think that really helps you rebound too from what I went through in Vermont, at least for me, because it gives you something else to look forward to. And then I also knew, I was like, okay, I don't need to go out and crush it this week because I know I'm resting because I have this other big challenge coming up. But I was excited about New Hampshire because it was a much more runnable course than Vermont's, obviously a lot of hills. And I do not like power hiking, Lise. I am like the worst power hiker, which I've been trying to work on as an ultra runner.
We've been working on that, but we're
So I was like, yes, I'm going to go. And the weather temperature was totally the opposite of Vermont. So that was exciting. I went out this race, feeling really good all day. I was probably like leading the race up until about mile 70. And thanks to your great advice, Coach, you said, careful, the cold weather can just suck the life out of you.
Yeah, it can get it.
And man, did it ever, especially the New Hampshire cold. But again, going back to my mindset, people were like, oh my gosh, it's so cold. And this one had a very high dropout rate because of the cold. But instead of focusing on how cold it was, I was just running, and I had just got like a new cheap jacket and some new gear from Amazon Essentials. And instead of focusing on how cold it was, I was just like, oh man, this gear is great. I'm so glad,
You've got to get a ton of gear and have everything on.
Yeah, I was like, I got to send that Jeff Bezos a thank you note because this stuff is keeping me warm, So, so it was really picking out those things. And, I went through the first 50 miles way too quick, I think. I went through but I felt good. I went through in about 8:40 pace.
Wow.
And I had some friends yelling at me like, slow down. And I was teasing them. I go, you're not the boss of me. Like, let me run my race. And sure enough, my second half of the race was much slower, but I just told myself, nope, just keep going. It doesn't matter how fast you go. And I remember when it got night and my body tightened up really bad.
Yeah, real bad.
I really started to slow down. And I always say, like, I have a quote from you from one of your podcasts. And I remember telling myself, hey, it's okay to be the tractor and not the Ferrari. Like, as long as I'm just moving forward one step at a time. And that definitely got me through the nighttime at that race. And then once the sun came back up, it was, it almost like gives you a second life, and you have a little breakfast snack or something. But pushing through that night, and the cold was rough.
There's a couple of points I wanted to bring out there. So you're still new to the ultra running game, or newish. So pacing is still something that you're learning, and it's really hard to know. Like when you're feeling really great and you've done 50 miles and you're still feeling great, but your pace is actually, is too high, then you are going to pay the price, and you can't imagine it and feel that until you've done maybe half a dozen races, and then you go, hang on a minute, I know I know what's coming at mile 80, so I'm going to really take it conservatively. And of course your tendency at the beginning, and I still did this for ages too, is to want to, I'll just get as much behind me as I possibly can, as fast as I can, and then if the wheels fall off, then but you're actually causing the wheels to fall off, But it's a really fine balancing act, because even just naturally over the day, you start to lose energy like we all do just in daily life. So your thoughts are, get the most done as fast as possible in the first 6 hours, when it's more about the consistency and the planning of the speed that you're going at. And then when it comes to cold, I reckon cold is way harder than heat to deal with, for me personally at least.
I think it is for me too, yeah.
Yeah. Cold just takes your will to live, because it just...
I'll take the suntan.
It just sucks you dry and makes you want to stop just moving, and you just want to go to sleep. And that's something that's really, really hard. So we had another couple of athletes doing a 24-hour race here around one of the lakes here, and it was freezing cold, not quite as cold as you, but it was cold. And when you've been running all day, you have no glycogen left in your body. And basically you're living on fat, fuel, and protein, hopefully not breaking down too much muscle of your own muscle, but usually you are. So you've got no glycogen to actually heat the body. And all your reserves are gone. So even when it's hot, you can be freezing and shaking. So when it's really cold, you can be very hypothermic very, very quickly, and then that saps the will to live. So what happened then? You got through the night, and then the sun, when the sunrise comes up, isn't it like a new reborn?
Oh, yeah, and I kept telling myself, to the food point too, Lisa, like what you and Neil have taught me, I just made sure I knew, because it was colder, my body was burning more calories, and I could tell I was much hungrier than you would be in the heat, and I just kept being like, it's okay, just keep snacking, keep eating, follow my nutrition plan. And I had my nutrition plan laid out, but I was also supplementing that with a lot of aid station food and like real food and soups and stuff. Right. And then I remember the last loop before the sun came up, and I was almost falling asleep, like running, falling over, and I just remember going, nope, just keep going. And my family had gone home and gone to the hotel, and I remember just telling myself, nope, you're here to do work, just keep going, and once the daylight comes, and they'll be back in the afternoon, and you get to see them. So it's like, I just told myself, keep going, doesn't matter how fast, keep eating, and one foot in front of the other. And that really got me through. And then I just kept being like thankful for packing the proper gear in the cold, because I was like, oh man, this is some people are running by me in like singlets, and I'm like, how are you wearing a singlet right now? But it was,
made it, didn't you? You got to the 100-mile.
Yeah, and I was on pace most of the day for like, at least 120 miles, and I made it to the 100-mile mark, and I still had time left, and the race director said, hey, Vin, you gotta keep going. And I felt good up until I got kind of like a second wind at mile 88 and was running strong again. And but then around mile 96 was a struggle. I think just mentally I knew I was hitting my 100-mile goal, because I had one loop to go, and I knew it was going to happen. And even if I crawled to the the next 4 miles. So once I got to that 100-mile mark, I was like, no, I'm happy with that, because that was the main goal.
That was the goal. That was the goal. And this is an interesting point. Whatever you put in your head as your goal, you will stop at that. So even if you could have carried on because you had time to carry on and to go over, but in your mind, you had actually set a set limit of 100. And even though, like you said, talked about possibly going on and doing maybe 110 or something like that, when you have that backup goal, that becomes your baseline. So you have to be really, really careful about what you do as your fixed goal, because
Yeah.
that will be where you get to, and not a penny more sort of thing.
And you're right, Lisa. It absolutely was my baseline goal, was that 100-mile. And I always try and set a big, scary goal too. So my big, scary goal was like, 120 miles. But then my baseline was that 100 miles. But if I had a baseline of 100K, I would have stopped at 100K, absolutely, because it was so cold, and you're just like, but I told myself, nope, I'm here to do this and just keep it going.
Yeah.
And I'm getting that 100 miles done, and obviously I didn't have any serious health things like in Vermont, so I was able to continue, and I felt good. And obviously, at points you got to expect you're going to feel like crap at multiple points in the race, and not like a serious injury like your friend that broke his leg, but just knowing that you're like, oh wow, I'm out of energy, I feel like crap. And I kind of expect it, I can recognize it, internalize it, and then realize that it's going to get better.
Yeah.
And that's really important for me, because then when it does happen, I tell myself, like, for mile 70 to like 88 was, when I say a struggle bus, Lisa, it was like a complete but I told myself, I was like, yeah, I came to run this race until the wheels fell off. And I was there to, I'd been training all year, as you know, and I was like, yep, I expected the wheels to fall off. So I expected this. So just keep going.
Yeah. You had prepared yourself so well, and you'd set this next goal, this 100-mile, was you wanted to join the 100-miler club. And I have to congratulate you, because, after
thanks, Lisa.
After that problem at Vermont that you experienced, it would be very easy to go, well, I'm not going to do anything for the next 18 months.
Yeah.
I'm going to lick my wounds, and I maybe never come back again because I failed, and all of these sort of things that go through people's minds. And they're all legitimate. But the thing is, you had the resilience to get back up and just what was it, I don't know, 8 weeks later, go and do another one. Was probably a little bit short for my liking, as a turnaround time, and I would, but you were ready for it. And I think you illustrate so many points that are so important, and that's resilience. That's whatever you set your goal out to be, that's what it becomes. Usually.
Yes, absolutely.
You learn a lot about pacing. You learned in the first race in Vermont, you learned a lot about, the shit can happen regardless of who you are, and you've got to think, like, people like Dean Canassis have races where they fail at and don't make it. Every ultramarathon runner has times when things go pear-shaped. I mean, I've definitely had enough of those. And they're never nice, because you're heartbroken, because you've just spent maybe a year. I was doing a race it wasn't even a race, it was expedition in the Himalayas, trying to do the world's highest marathon ever recorded, a world record.
Wow.
And I'd spent a year and a half in preparing, and I'm not good at altitude, and I'm not good in the cold. It's not my forte. I'm better in deserts. But I was with a guy who was a mountaineer and done Everest and stuff, and we were on track. And I get up there, and after a year and a half of preparation, over $50,000 of money raised, film crews, the Prime Minister on our freaking documentary, it was really big deal. And I get altitude sickness, and I couldn't even start, like the heartbreak and the disappointment. And this was getting towards the end of my career anyway. And it was just like, freaking hell, and that really knocked the crap out of me. But I had a couple of really good friends, and my husband, Hazley, who just were there to pick up the pieces. And it's really important that you have those people that come on, you got this, we got you. Because it can really blow you to pieces. When you set big, hairy goals and then you fail at them, what I want you to understand is it hurts, but you are someone who's pushing the limits. You're an ambitious person that's reaching for the stars, and you cannot control all the variables.
Absolutely.
It will go pear-shaped. So, Vin, I think I just want you to wrap up. We've got to wrap up now. We've got a meeting coming up. We're going to get to our technical stuff after this. So we better get on to that. But Vin, I just want to leave the last word to you. Tell us what you want to get across to people listening to this who are doing their first 5K, who are just starting out on running, who are aiming for an ultramarathon. Tell us what you want to get across.
Yeah, I want to, and this leads right to your point that you just brought up, Lisa, too, that these things happen and everything happens for a reason, and you're much more capable than you think you are. So you might be thinking right now, and it's all those failures and those successes, I think, all provide a great frame of reference. So someone right now might be training for their first 5K and say, oh man, I'm struggling to break 32 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever their time goal might be. But then they might look back a year from now and be like, wow, now I'm running 25 minutes with ease. And remember when, I was really struggling. So it's all frame of reference. So even those struggles that you go through, and they really help you become a better person to kind of get the job done that you need to be able to, not just run these races and push the limits, but it's really a metaphor for life, right? Yeah. And I think I've learned so much from that. And at the time it might seem disappointing or it might seem difficult, but then when you look back and you're like, wow, look at the person I've become now because I've challenged myself and I've gone through those successes and pushed my limits to hit those goals. And I might have hit a lot of them and I might have failed at some of them, but when you look back a year from now or even longer, it becomes like, wow, those help make me the person that I am today. Yeah. And I can certainly say that for myself, from my running career, my business career, going through like my broken back. I probably never would have found ultra running. I wouldn't have been introduced to you, so everything really happens for a reason, to the development of who you are as a person. And if you look at it that way, I think you can be totally unstoppable with whatever you set your mind to, right?
And you are definitely unstoppable, Vin Framularo.
Oh, thanks, Coach. You are too.
You're absolutely relentlessly positive. You're a real poster boy for the personal development side of things, and that if you work really hard on your mindset, you can change your own personality and you can become a stronger, better, more positive, happier person. You've certainly shown me a thing or two over the last year, because, like with our business side of things, Vin really has changed our whole dynamic in our company. Because he brings a super amount of technical knowledge to the whole business, which we've desperately needed. But he also brings, when things don't go wrong, because by the same token, as things go wrong in ultramarathon running, things go wrong in business. And when we've been, months preparing for a launch, or months doing all of this sort of, technical stuff, and then crickets, nobody comes, and we're like, and we're wanting to give up. And Vin's like, well, no, we'll just try this other thing and we'll go down this track and we'll learn. He's relentlessly positive in every aspect of his life, and that has been so valuable to us in our company. And as an athlete, it just really shows what you can achieve when you have this incredible mindset. So, Vin, it's awesome having you on the team. Thank you for sharing your story today with everyone from Running Hot. Any last
thanks,
words?
Lisa. Yeah.
Any last words, mate, before we get on to the actual work today?
No, I think, just what we said. I would encourage everyone to really listen to what Lisa and Neil put out. And, I'm constantly learning from you weekly, Lisa, so I really appreciate it. And, just keep pushing forward, team, and take those wins and take those, use those losses too as growth opportunities.
Amen. That's a good place to stop. Thank you very much, Vin. If you want to reach out to Vin, where can they find you on Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find me at Vin Framularo. So my first name, VIN, and then last name, FRAMULARO. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. You can even email me, vin@framularo.com. Or even reach out through the Running Hot page and through Lisa and Neil. And
we'll put all the things in the show notes. Because Vin, if anybody needs help with anything technical on computers, as far as things like sales funnels and ClickFunnels and or pretty much everything technical, I don't really like to share you because you're too good.
Thanks, Lee.
If anyone wants help, he's your man. So thanks very much, Vin, and we'll get on to our work now.
Excellent. Thanks, team. Have a great day.